Thank you for joining us once again on the State of Freedom.
The State of Freedom is a listener-supported podcast. We are committed to pursuing the truth about policymaking, regulatory actions, and political maneuvers in Louisiana and at the national level that stand to impact your freedoms.
Please support the State of Freedom by becoming a monthly supporter or member of the Warrior Circle, or by advertising your business, your nonprofit, or your event with us. Go to freedomstate.us. We are bypassing the mainstream media cartel and the establishment political parties in Louisiana and coming directly to you, spreading the uncensored voice of freedom across Louisiana and beyond. Blanco Brothers has been in business in Louisiana for about 30 years now. I have personal experience with this company, and I know others who have as well. If you have a business or a home and you've got roofing, gutter, sheet metal issues at all, one number you need to know, and that's Blanco Brothers Construction. He will treat you right financially, and he will take very good care of you with regard to the quality of the service that he provides. I cannot recommend Blanco Brothers Construction more highly enough. Memorize the number 225-226-4222. Blanco Brothers Construction, the very best in the business.
All right. Technology eludes us once again. Well,
persistence always pays off.
It does. It does. Well, sometimes the fight for truth comes with a price. And for Tina Peters, that price was her freedom and a whole lot more than that. After raising concerns about election systems, Tina went from serving as a county clerk and recorder to becoming a political prisoner. Now, after a presidential pardon and clemency from Colorado Governor Jared Polis, Tina Peters is finally able to tell the story that political powers wanted to silence. Today, she joins us to discuss her time in prison, her recent meetings with President Trump and federal officials, President Trump's election integrity speech, the ongoing D-class efforts, and where the fight for election transparency, election integrity, election fairness goes from here. It is 10 a.m. Central. It's Thursday, July 30th. I'm Danielle Walker, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host, the watchdog-in-chief of Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, Chris Alexander. Welcome to the State of Freedom, everybody. We are coming to you live on Voice of the People USA TV and radio network on Rumble, X, YouTube, and Facebook. Take a moment, hit the thumbs up. Do all the nice things to help us out in the algorithm. We really appreciate it. Get involved in the chat. Hopefully our chat is working today. We've had some struggle bus with the chat lately, but hopefully our chat is working today and we'll be able to see your comments. And you can always catch us later on our audio-only platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcast. Well, without further ado, let us bring forward our very, very special guest, someone we have been waiting a long time to see. Tina Peters. Tina, welcome back.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Chris. It's good to be back.
I bet so.
I was doing my show and being on podcasts and everything until I went to prison, and then they cut that off. So many of the people out there, in my website's tinapeters.us, many of the people out there saw on X and other places, Rumble, the shows still went on. I was directing actually from prison and like a horse at a starting gate. You know, the midterms are coming. I got to get out of here. Lord, why am I still here? But now I know a lot of why he had me there. So,
absolutely.
Well, we are very much looking forward to hearing about how you're doing, Tina, about your time. Let's start out with the scripture of the day. We'll get the tone set, and we will go wherever you want to go. What I've been telling people is, Tina, you can say whatever you want to say in our house. We have some ideas of where we'd like the conversation to go, but we want to hear from you. Today's scripture is Galatians chapter 4, verses 16 and 17. And the words just keep getting smaller. All right. It says, have I really become your enemy because I tell you the truth? Can't you see what these false teachers are doing? They want to win you over so you will side with them. They want you divided from me so you will follow only them. Would you call that integrity? And we've seen in the last 6 years, more than any other time in our lives, that the truth divides. And there are those who pursue the truth and want the truth regardless of what it reveals, and there are those who shun the truth for self-preservation in order to stay comfortable or to maintain some kind of grip on power or control. There are those who embrace what John 8:32 says, that the truth will set you free. And then there are those who prefer the bondage of lies to the unknown, to the unknowns and the lack of control that come with freedom. And this is a big part of the spiritual war that we're experiencing. On one side is Satan, the father of lies. On the other side, the winning side, I'll remind everyone, is Jesus, the way, the truth, and the life. Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Jesus came to give us life abundant, life overflowing with his goodness. And I was thinking about this morning, and just occurred to me that we're facing the same choices today that the Israelites were given when Moses was their leader. He said, I set before you today a blessing and a curse. And then Joshua after him, choose this day whom you will serve. And the lie, and I know our viewers know this, the lie is that there can be a middle ground. And there's no middle ground. Not choosing, not standing is defaulting to the enemy's side. And one of my favorite scriptures confirms this. And this is what I'll leave with us this morning on the scripture. It's Hebrews chapter 10, verse 39. And it says in the Passion Translation, but we are certainly not those who are held back by fear and perish. We are among those who have faith and experience true life.
So good.
So good. And it's so powerful that, when the Lord says, don't fear, we are not people of fear. Obviously, there is something that maybe would cause people fear, or he wouldn't be saying that. But no matter what we're experiencing, we're called to be fearless. And I think it can only be the grace of God that can place someone in a position where they don't fear, because it's the natural human tendency to fear and to worry and to stress, especially when we can't control the circumstances, and when we're experiencing things that maybe we don't fully understand. And that's why I think it's one of the reasons why I'm so happy to have Tina on the show, because I look at Tina, I look at you as someone who really is in very exalted company among the great spiritual and Christian and civic leaders throughout history, because I can't find one who did not suffer very significant adverse experiences and consequences because of what they stood for and what they believed in. I think it's impossible to stand for things that matter and not suffer persecution. In fact, Jesus explicitly said that we can expect it. And it's how we respond in those moments and where we stand at the end of it that matters. And so for that reason, really, it's such a great pleasure to have you on, because you've really run the full gamut and have maintained your fidelity and your faith throughout the whole process. So welcome to the state of freedom.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris and Danielle, and to all the people listening and watching. As you're giving these scriptures and telling these truths, I'm just bursting inside, because I experienced so much of that, and I've been able to encourage other people. And I've said a long time in the public and the political arena that if you can be swayed by money, power, position, or fear, then you can be compromised. And so you have to look at your character and say, are any of those things that I would be able to do without? Is fear. I had a couple just the last few days say, well, you know what? if they threatened my kids, I don't know if I could do that. And I said, what God calls you to, he's going to see you through. And he's the one, they're his kids. He's just entrusted you with them. So you have to believe that if you're on the right path and that you're doing the things that you're supposed to do for God, that he will take care of all those things. And, it's interesting. I was at a prayer breakfast in Washington, D.C., and I was speaking, and I asked the people, I said, how many of you would be willing, if God led you and you ended up and you had to go to prison, how many of you would do it? And, not everybody raised their hand. So there is a lot of fear in the Christian world. They may not be persuaded by money. They may not be persuaded by power. They may not be persuaded by position, being given certain, exalted positions. But many of the people in the Christian community are afraid. And, I remember when people would go out and travel the country and tell my story and what we had discovered in the forensic images that were legal, that were legal to do, and actually what every clerk in the United States should do to back up their election records. They said, well, we're afraid. We don't want to be Tina Petered. I became a verb. And so,
yeah.
And I remember when we were asking for my sentencing to be delayed until after October, until after the elections that year in 2024. And the DA specifically said on a National Public Radio interview, I believe it was, that no, we want the sentencing on October 3rd. We want to send a message to every election official out there that if you do this, if you go against and question the mechanisms that people voting our elections, then this could happen to you too. So I think that is really the theme that I see in the Christian community is fear. And I think about when Stephen was being stoned. Remember, but he was looking above his body. So I don't think that we even feel, if we're being tortured. I don't think that people that are standing, I don't believe God has you go through that. I mean, I could get into things I've seen about my son after he died. And, my son, this is hard for some people to understand or to fathom, but my son hit the water in the Hudson Bay doing 170 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. But I believe that his spirit split off before he hit that water. And I have spiritual backup to validate that. So, what God brings you to, he will see you through. And when you walk through the fire, the Bible says you will not get burnt. And I had a vision of that, and I'll share that if you like.
Absolutely. But Tina, before you say that, along the lines of what you were saying, it's so profound that you would talk about this fear that seems to afflict so many Christians. And, we all go through periods where we feel afraid. I mean, we're human beings, and that's why we always have to remind ourselves of God's grace, spend time with him, and allow him to change it and to take us to another level. But even in the scripture, there were people who walked away from Jesus right to his face because they couldn't handle that. They couldn't handle the nature of his mission. They didn't understand it. They were afraid to follow him. And many people walked away, and the scripture says that. And I think we may be living in a society where there are a lot of nominal Christians, but I wonder where they would be if they were faced with a situation where, you really have to put something on the line here, and there's really a cost here and a risk to remain faithful to Jesus and to remain faithful to your principles. I wonder how many would still be standing in front of him like you did.
Well, I think that we are born in this season for a reason, and everyone has a purpose. And when you're following God, you can say you're a Christian, but it doesn't make standing in your garage making you a car. You have to actually be here to do his will. And so I remember in 2016 when I was diagnosed with lung cancer, and they ended up taking a third of my lung. But I said, okay, God, I said, I'm not afraid. I know where I'm going. If this is it for me, I'm okay with that. And I said, but my prayer. And I looked up and I said, don't let me leave here until I've accomplished everything that you sent me here to do. He sent us here to do, right? And at that split moment, nothing had changed in my diagnosis. Nothing had changed in my medical reports or anything else. At that split moment, I knew I was going to live and not die, that he was not done with me. But the thing of it is if you shrink back and out of fear and you don't fulfill your purpose. I remember when I would speak in front of groups and I'd say, I'm sure everybody like me wants to hear, at the end of your life, well done, good and faithful servant. And one day the Holy Spirit rebuked me a little, and he said, read the rest of that scripture, tell them the rest of that scripture. And it says, because you have been faithful in small things, I will give you governance over much. And so, someone out there that thinks that, well, all I can do for God right now, or all I feel that you need to know what he's telling you to do. You don't, I always said, well, if you spent your whole life making an apple pie, and when you got to heaven, you realize that God doesn't like apple pies, he likes cherry, then it doesn't make any difference what you're doing in your efforts to serve God. So you have to make sure that that you're serving him. And so every day, like I'm faced with choices right now after being out. And well, I'll tell you the story about the fire first. The vision that I had years ago. We were up on a mountain overlooking our city, and a group of prayer warriors. We were worshiping and praying, and the sun was coming up. And we had music going, and we were worshiping, and I had my eyes closed, and all of a sudden my spiritual eyes were open. And at first I felt the warmth. I felt the I could feel it was the sun coming up and the warmth of my body. But then I realized that I was standing in front of a tunnel of fire, and it was terrifying. I mean, there was this fire that I was standing right in front of, and it was a circular fire tunnel, and I knew that I was supposed to walk through it, and I shrunk back, and then I could hear this gentle, reassuring, encouraging voice saying, come on, you'll be fine. He said, you won't be burnt, you'll be fine. And so I started walking through this tunnel, and I got to the other side, and I looked to my each side, and there were other people that had gone through their tunnel of fire, and we all had little plumes of fire on our head, symbolizing the Holy Spirit within us and the fire. And so during this trial, during all this that I've been through, God kept bringing up to give me a barometer of where I was in this fire.
Wow.
And I remember I believe it was before sentencing, because at sentencing, I went right to jail, right, and then to prison. And he showed me that I was like a runner, and you know how a runner is at the blocks, and he has one hand down, and he's ready to go. And that's where I was. My whole body was in the fire, but my head and that part were ready to spring out. So I knew that I was close. I had no idea how close, and it turned out to be almost 2 years before I was released. All the time I was in there, I was saying, God, why am I still in here? We've got the midterms. I said, I just saw Mondami get elected. I just saw Spanberger in Virginia. I said, I was telling people she's going to win by 51%. That's just the way these go. I know how these elections go. I know how these machines work. I know how the registration database and all the things, all the mechanics of elections work. And I've been blessed to be with the brightest PhDs and election experts in the country, maybe the world.
Yeah.
And I said, I know she's going to win by 51%. And sure enough, she won by 50.8%. So I was like a horse in a starting gate. I was just like, God, you've got to let me out of here. I need to help. You've got to let me out. Why am I still here? I mean, there's plenty of women in here that can tell people about Jesus. That's not why you have me in here. You have me here. And so, and all during this time, people kept saying, it's just 2 more weeks, just 2 more weeks. This went on for almost 2 years. So I get my hope. And then I'd be like, so even my producer who you met, Apollo, who did my show while I was incarcerated, and I call him my son, both of them actually, Jared, who was producing behind the scenes, and I mean, they've been with me from the beginning, and my best friend Marcy, that had me call her twice a day to make sure that I wasn't in the hole, and she didn't need to call the attorneys. But it was like, why God? Why God? And the more they persecuted me, and they persecuted me hard in there. I mean, the women would be chest to chest right in my face. People would have to pull them off me. And the administration, the woman who ran the prison, she was a captain. The warden didn't do much. He kind of gave all authority to this captain, and she hated me. She had a statue of a demon in her office. It was just evil. You could feel the evil. Yeah. So I want to stop right now and say thank you to those that were out there praying, because there's many times I would call Marcy and said, it's bad. I said, you've got to tell everybody to pray, and these are the specifics. And they would pray, and I could feel it. It was like a hot knife cutting through butter. As far as dividing that evil away from me.
You felt the prayers.
Oh, I felt the prayers. I absolutely felt the prayers. Without God, you can't get through something like what many people are going through. You just can't, and I feel bad for people that don't know God, because He is our strength. He is our light, and the darkness hates it. But where the light is, the darkness, as you know, has to flee. Yeah. So they kept coming down on me. I was thrown in the hole 5 times. There was 4 during a period of time, 2 weeks. They had SORT there, which is Security Operations Response Team from all over the state. That I was only allowed out for 2 hours a day, so I would be walking the thank goodness it was a pretty place aesthetically. I mean, there were grounds, there was a gym and things like that. And so when I went out, there would be all these officers, because they were afraid somebody was going to break me out. That's how intense. That's how intense it became, especially after the pardon by President Trump.
Yeah.
And God was saying.
Could you describe the hole?
The hole?
Yeah, the hole.
The hole is, and they kept telling me there is no hole. And I said, well, yes, there is. You can call it whatever you want, but this is the hole. The hole is it's just concrete. You have a concrete, like a very thin pad, much like you have in the cells. You don't get out. You get all your food through the slot in the door. There's no place to hang anything. I mean, you just have what you have and some toiletries. They let you out after 3 days. You can get out, take a shower or whatever, and you're just there.
Total solitary confinement, Tina? Is it just total solitary?
It is solitary confinement. There's other people in other cells in one of the places that I was, and when they would be able to be out, I could communicate with them through my cell door. As a matter of fact, there were so many things that God allowed me to do for the women in there, and eventually I was able to win them over. They would see. Of course, the news covered me, so they'd all watch the local news. They say, "Oh, you were so pretty back then," because you're not wearing makeup. Everybody looks the same. You're in a horrid yellow. I've got one of them here, like lemon yellow horrible t-shirt and forest green pants and top. So everybody looks bad there. But they started seeing what was happening because letters and grievances that the women had, they had no outlet, they had no voice. So I started having my attorney bring in the administrative regulations. He would come visit me once a week, and I would show them that here's your rights. This is what they cannot do. And I remember one time I was in the hole, and I won't say her name, but I liked her. This one, not all the correctional officers were bad, and they got a little better as time went on. Some of them still hated me. And she came by my cell, and I said her name. I said, how long are they going to keep me in here? And I said, where's the woman who hit me? Where is she? She ended up getting out two weeks later, out on parole, if you can imagine. And they said, well, they could keep you up here for 2 or 3 months. And I looked at her and I said, they can't do that. The AR, I said, you can only keep me up here 15 days. And she goes, your ARs. And I said, you're right, I do. So I started teaching, but they would keep women up there that didn't know their rights. And so
breaking the rules.
Right. So I started teaching them their rights. And then they started slipping me these letters secretly about all the things that had been done to them. One woman was raped by her transport. Well, this was by her transport officer.
Wow.
And and then other people were really, really sick because of the black mold. Other ones, the lead was so bad in the water that the dog program, they gave them purified water. But we drank that water. I had growths all over my body. I was wasting away. I was horrible. I had a cough from August, a really bad cough, which made me think, oh my goodness, is my lung cancer returning, right? And it was because the bad air, the heat, during certain times the heat was like 95, 96 degrees in my cell, and then other times it was freezing, it was below 40. So all these things were happening, and we were sending these, I was giving them to my attorney, and he was sending them to my team, and they were getting them to Harmeet Dillon in the Civil Rights Division.
Wow.
So all of a sudden the DOJ starts coming down on the prisons in Colorado, because Trump is every month, at least Trump was on the, on X going, let her go, let Tina Peters go. And of course he was having conversations with Jared Polis, the governor, and nobody would let me go. I've learned a lot of stories since I've been out of the efforts to free me. And there were a lot of efforts to free me.
Yeah.
But knowing that these women didn't have a voice, and they said to me, when you get out, they said, please don't forget us. And so talking about my path forward is, there's a lot of things on my heart. I'm associated with about 4 organizations and this is what they think happened to my son. They think it was the human traffickers, that he was working secretly with a group, him and some Texas Rangers, to go after the human traffickers, as well as being a Navy SEAL. So that's a big thing on my heart, and I've got 4 organizations that I support with that. Prison reform. I just came back from Washington, D.C. and from Texas, met with some people in Texas about prison reform.
Reform, Tina, the prison reform is something that you're doing because of your experience in jail, right?
Yeah, well, I wasn't in jail. I was in jail when I first got sentenced, because they stacked all of my charges, which meant that my misdemeanors, they made me serve them consecutively in jail. But jail is different than prison.
Right, but what I'm saying is, it's your experience being incarcerated and the relationships that you developed and the knowledge that you developed. Yeah. That's what has inspired your interest in prison reform, right?
And that's why I believe that's
what I'm getting at.
There.
Yes.
That's where I believe God delayed me being released. I think he really wanted to, to instill that in me, that
Yeah.
there's so many voices besides the voters, that their voices are not being heard, but there's so many voices that are behind those walls that have no voice. And there's a lot of people that have served violent crimes, and they're in there for life for 30 years or whatever. But then there's a lot of people too that have changed. There's a lot of people that were in there for minor things. Most of the people I was with they were violent. Some of them, one of them, like the woman who was raped, was a financial crime. But yeah, that there's
Do you
stories.
feel like there were some there, Tina? Did you meet some that you felt shouldn't be there at all?
There was some, I mean, it was interesting because they would come up, they would talk to me and they said, Tina, we deserve to be here. We did something wrong. We broke the law, but you shouldn't be here. But there comes a point where your sentence is your punishment. But they, meaning some of the officers, would compound that by making their lives miserable. And I mean, think about, I would think, well, I would try to understand some of the correctional officers, like some of them I felt were small. They had been bullied in school. Now here was a chance to bully other people. And there were that let power, you know, control them.
Yeah.
So
The worst people who should be in positions of authority, frankly.
but think about it. I mean, they don't pay them a lot. They had teachers. The prisons have a condition of parole is that you complete programs. Well, the programs you couldn't complete because the teachers that were there to teach were made to be correctional officer roles 4 out of the 5 days of school. So what would take usually a 3 or 4 month period to complete a course now took over a year, and it would be 12 people to a class. So if you can imagine, in a place of 500, 600, 700 people, and the men's prisons, of course, are larger volumes. Some people never are able to complete any programs, which puts them back. So there's a lot of things like that need to be fixed. Colorado only has 2 women's prisons, and they're completely full. They're overcrowded. Even the jails are suing them because they won't take their prisoners out of the jails that are supposed to go to prison. And because of that, there is no minimum security prison in Colorado.
Yeah.
Just I mean, I could go on and on and on. I don't want to take the whole program.
But let me ask you this, Tina, before we move on here. So, because I think this is important. You're saying that because there are no minimum security prisons in Colorado, you're going to have people who are convicted of relatively minor crimes, even white-collar crimes, housed and rubbing shoulders with people who are convicted of heinous, violent crimes. They're going to be in the same proximity of each other in the prison. Is that what
In
you're
the
saying?
same cell.
In the same cell, which
I was,
can.
yeah.
I mean, there are so many different reasons why that is so unwise and so dumb. Yeah.
So that's one of the things is, I'm just looking to see. I mean, the women were like, please don't forget us when you're out. And I said, I promise I won't forget you. So their stories need to be told.
Absolutely.
And, and so I want to be a platform for that. I had advocated to have an independent board that would report to the governor, that would allow the inmates to be able to air their grievances without a correctional officer or administrator from the prison there, so that it would be confidential. Simple things like that where they're able to get their voice out.
Yeah, that's smart, and it certainly prevents retaliation.
Right.
Well, how is
hold on,
No,
Chris.
you go ahead, Danielle.
Sorry.
We're just taking over, Danielle. Sorry.
No, it's good. I gotta get my elbows in there. You've been so persecuted and you face so much. Before we move on from kind of your experience, I just wanted to, how did you keep your heart right when you were
Mm.
going through that? Chris and I face, there are hecklers, there are people who are opposed to us, right? There are things that go on in anybody's life where who's standing up and speaking the truth that you would say, these people are a thorn in my side. But you certainly experienced a great deal more than us. How did you keep your heart right with respect to those people? Because keeping your heart right had to be your lifeline to God. So give us some advice.
God will give you the measure of grace that you need for the hour. That's probably the most simplest explanation. If you need a little grace to get through a angry motorist, tailgating you, he'll give you grace for that. But when you're in the more difficult situation that you're in, he gives you that grace to, if you just trust him, it just comes. I remember one time there was some really bad stuff going on, and all these black birds were there. I mean, big black ravens, like, I called them watchers. They were obviously demonic. And I called Marcy and I said, Marcy, I can feel the evil. And this is right before I was released, about 3 weeks or a month before I was released. And she started praying. And I told her, I said, I think there's something hindering me. I think I need the people to pray. There's something blocking my release. And she did. And even the inmates, we'd walk along and these birds would come up and be staying there, rah, rah, doing their thing. And it was unusual. And then they were gone. So I believe prayer is the right kind of prayer. I mean, God's will be done. There's a prayer that I'm going to put out on my website that when I was just in Dallas, a friend gave that to me and she said, pray this every day. And I'm going to share that on my website. And okay. I want to talk a little bit when we get to the elections part of it too, about my website and what people can do right now. But that's my answer, is God will give you the grace if you just trust him. If you're faithful in the small things, he will give you governance over much. If you just continue to trust him, that God will get you through what he brings you to, then I think that is the answer of how you get through whatever it is.
Yeah. What was the lowest moment that you felt? The lowest moment, or maybe more than one?
Wow. The lowest moment. The lowest moment I felt, because I'd fought hard. I had 4 different teams of attorneys. Different things happened with them. The first ones were fired, and they should never have been. I probably would have never gone to prison if those attorneys had not been fired. That was not my decision. The second attorney took the money up front and ended up trading my case with the DA. This is all my opinion, so I don't want to be sued or anything. They're so litigious out there anymore. But that particular attorney had a case before the same district attorney. It was for 26 pounds of fentanyl, and he had my attorney had both cases. The DA had both cases. And that guy got off on probation, and I was sent to jail. I lost 2 previous cases before my actual trial that I should have won. And I happened to see, I don't usually watch the news about myself, but I happened to see the newscast that night. And my attorney had said, I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. And he's glad handing it up with the DA. So I fired him. Got another set of attorneys who were very, very good, but they would not let me speak out about the elections. They said, well, these were not your charges. And see, the state was very, very clever.
Crafty. Yeah.
Yeah.
in the way that they charged me, so that we were not allowed, we were denied 41 motions. We were denied bringing in evidence um, to the jury of why I did what I did, and the rights that I had to do what I did. That attorney uh, was focused on just the charges. Um, we would not have won. Well, we didn't win, but it was the wrong choice. And so 5 days before the trial, now this is pretty gutsy, but I was speaking at a church out in California, and I was just going to speak that night and then leave the next day. Well, there was no way I could get out. For whatever reason, I was blocked from leaving, and God had a reason. So they asked me, said, well, can you speak the next day? So I spoke the next day. And then that night, when I went off the platform, I walked out, and this woman and her husband came running up to me. They said, we have to tell you what we saw. We have to tell you what we saw. And she says, right, honey? And she looks at her son and says, yes, Mom. She says, when you were up there speaking, you had two huge angels on either side of you. Huge. She said, and when you would turn, because I like to walk when I'm talking, because I love the people. And they said, when you would turn, they would turn. When you would back up, they back up. When you come forward, when you turn the other way. And she said, we just had to tell you about this. Well, that night I decided that I was going to fire my attorneys. So I finally get out to get home on Sunday. Monday morning, the judge and the prosecutors, they're furious. And so this is a longer story, so I'm going to keep it short. Anyway, the judge was going to make me try my own case, but it didn't work out that way. So the new attorneys came on 5 days before the trial was supposed to start. And by God's grace, we were able to extend the trial once again for about 6 months.
Yeah. You know why they were steaming, Tina, by the way? You know why they were steaming? They were steaming because they could not legally or constitutionally have forced you to trial without competent counsel. So they didn't have any choice. That would have been reversible error, but that's what they were angry about. I'm sure you already know that.
Well, God knew that.
Yeah,
And so it was, it's been a long process. It really has. And it's not over. Right now, the appeals court remanded my case, my sentencing, back to the same judge who sentenced me, because he violated my First Amendment rights to speak about elections. And he said so in his sentencing. I don't know if you've seen the sentencing, but it was, I was just on a show where they replayed the part where I'm pleading for him to not, and in the background is my husband, who that's another story, ended up killing along this journey. But you asked me what my lowest point was. It was standing in the courtroom at the sentencing after the judge sentenced me. And I had always tried to keep I never wanted to ever let them see me, that they were getting to me. Yeah. So I didn't cry. I wasn't angry, none of those things. But when they took me down from that courtroom, and I looked at the people in the courtroom gallery that had come to support me at the sentencing, and they took me down. It's way down this basement. And then they put me into a solitary cell. And then those big, heavy doors, you can't even imagine the weight and the heaviness of these iron doors that just slam behind you. They're very loud. And at that point, I broke. At that point, it was
after your sentencing. This was after the sentence, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is something that I should have, at the very most, had probation. And as a matter of fact, that's what Jared Polis pointed out when he was criticized, that a friend of his, a senator in Colorado, was charged with influencing a public servant, which were what my felonies were. And she was given probation and a fine.
You got 9 years. Well, you got 9 years. Is that right, Tina?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I can certainly see
Unbelievable.
how that would have been the lowest moment. Yeah.
It's interesting. I just met somebody that was there that night when they took me down there, or that day when they took me down there. And I said, yeah, I said, I was 12 days in holding there. It was horrible because holding is where they put the people that are just thrown in jail, that are high on drugs, that are actually going through detox,
Oh
really
gosh.
sick. And I was with 12 women in a small cell. Um, our mats were, for the 12 women, touched each other. That tells you
Oh
how
gosh.
close we were. And I remember there was one. I have so many prison stories that I'll tell you sometime. But I was laying there, and this one woman who was just jonesing, we used to call it really bad, kept kicking me in the head. And this one girl saw what she was doing to me. She says, if she doesn't stop that, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to beat her up. She ended up being my first roommate. Once, after 12 days, they kept me on a mental health hold and some other crazy hold. And I talked to one of the officers that had been there like 14 years. He says, we've never seen this before.
Oh my gosh.
Someone being kept on a hold like this. They would not let me out of this
Wow.
horrible, horrible place. That was worse than the hole.
Yeah.
Oh my
But they
gosh.
were, they were doing it to keep torturing me all through the
Sure.
process.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, Tina, we want to shift gears a little bit. And I know you've been busy. You've been busy since you stepped out of that prison. I saw you in Las Vegas at the Fraud Fighter Summit. Gosh, probably just a couple weeks after you got out, and then again in Virginia at a gathering. And I know you've been very focused on elections. We saw very happily that you spent some time with President Trump, as some other administration officials, Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance, Ed Martin. What can you tell us about your meeting, specifically with President Trump, and then anybody
Mm,
else you want to talk about?
mm. What an amazing president. I mean, people should thank God and pray for him every single day. Every single day. When things come up during the day, I mean, set a timer, do something, pray for that man. I mean, God has put him in a position of, I mean, talking about grace and talking about persecution. I mean, I can relate to him in my small way, but I mean, he literally has the world on his shoulders. And so please, please pray for him. So um, I was able to have lunch with him personally. And excuse me. And right off the Oval Office, if he's sitting at the desk, to his left is a doorway. And there's a very small room with a table that seats four.
Okay.
And so I had the honor, and then there's a TV right there so we can keep up on what's going on in the media. Um, and so he was sitting at the head. I was sitting right beside him, and my attorney was sitting to my right, and then his attorney was sitting across from me. And I just told him, I said, Mr. President, I said, if something's not done before the midterms, we're going to lose this country. And I said, we need to get rid of the machines. I asked him to fire the EAC, which a week later he did. That's the Election Assistance Commission. And just a little bit about the elections, the EAC. The commissioners that had been in there were two Democrats and one Republican. One in particular, Hicks, who was the head commissioner, he was appointed by Obama in 2015. They're supposed to only serve 2 terms, 2 4-year terms. So he was way overdue to have
Yeah.
left office. That is the office that could decertify the machines, because the machines and the electronic poll books and all the things that run our elections cannot be legally certified. They do not meet the Help America Vote Act, the restrictions in the way that they're designed. They have Chinese parts. I won't get into all of that, but they are there is no way to patch them. There is no way to keep them they must be done away with. And what I'm going to share with you in a moment is what people can do. It's been it's going on 3 weeks now, 2.5 weeks since the Senate came back. There needs to be commissioners that are confirmed by the Senate to get in there. It may not happen before the midterms. I don't know. It depends on the Senate because they take all kinds of vacations and recesses and everything else, but which should make every American upset at that. Plus getting paid for life. And there's a lot of other things I could go off into that
Absolutely.
situation
Yep.
that should be remedied. But of course, they vote on whether they should have be paid for life and all that.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that he did. I'm still talking with his team. I was able to meet with CISA, which is which deals with the infrastructure and the security administration, and we were able to put forth some recommendations. CISA is not it is not a forceful body that they can make people do things, but they can actually make recommendations for because I remember as clerk, we would get CISA recommendations on security for elections. There's things that they can do. So we put out a letter to them, and that's on my website that people can see along with our recommendations. There are, and there's also phone numbers that I want people to call, because I'll tell you a cute story, and then I'll get back to my with the president. But I was in the green room on the mall, Fox News green room, and there was a young man who came up to me. I just love the people. There was a young man that came up to me, and he said, I was an intern, he says, this last year at the White House. And he said, people would call in, like thousands of people a day would call in. They have to take the calls saying, free Tina Peters, free Tina Peters.
Wow.
So after we came out of the we had our lunch and we talked about a lot of things, and he was very generous with his time. As a matter of fact, one of his aides came in and gave him a note, and I saw what it said. It says, "Your meeting with Marco Rubio is now," and all this, and kind of just pushed it to the side. He just kept talking to me, So he cares. He truly cares about the people. If I could instill upon people my reactions with our president, is that he truly, truly does care about the people of the United States. He cares about the things you care about, and he's working really hard to accomplish all the things that matter to you.
Yeah.
So we walk out. We had a very nice lunch, and we walk out, a while after he was slid that note that everybody for the meeting was there, and the door opens. We go back into the Oval Office, and there's Marco Rubio there, and there's J.D. Vance, and the people that you mentioned were there, and they said, and they're really warm to me. And they said, and this is free Tina Peters. And they go, we know who she is. It was really funny.
You don't have to tell us.
And Susie Wiles was there, and Susie Wiles asked me if I would go over some things that were getting ready to come out that you saw in the president's speech. And so I feel very honored to have, just even if it's just the high chair at the table, of such amazing patriots that are working hard.
Well, it says a lot, Tina. It says a lot for the respect that he has for you as well, because he's been persecuted in his own right. So I think he has a unique empathy for other people who he sees are being subjected to that type of injustice. So the fact that you were there and got that kind of time with the president just speaks so highly of who you are, the character of the person that you are. But I wanted to ask you, though, about, you just alluded to the speech that President Trump gave recently, and there was also, of course, a presentation by the Secretary of the DHS, Mark Wayne Mullen, 2 or 3 weeks ago, a couple of weeks ago now. What is your reaction to that? What was your takeaway from that?
There's a lot. There's a lot that the president wants to tell the people about how fragile our elections are. And he did. There'll be more coming out. It's more than just China and Russia and all that. There are actually people that have been in the administration for years. There's people that are in Congress. There are people that have been swayed by money, power, position, or fear, that are blockers in the White House and in the administration, not his closest people, but in other agencies, the CIA and places like that. So there's a lot to deal with in those regards. He's making big big strides, I guess is what I want to say. You can see what's coming up now on Fauci and how all that's coming out, his diary and all of this showing what a criminal he was and how many countless thousands of lives that were lost because of this man and because of the people that were pushing this death agenda. Yeah. So when people they think they see nothing happening, it's not necessarily happening on their time. It's happening on God's time. And God's really the supreme commander in chief, and Trump
on everything for sure. But where do you think, Tina, there were a couple of things that were said. We've had David Clements on the show. We've had 2 or 3 other people on who've talked about President Trump's actual presentation and also the presentation of DHS. And they seem to suggest that there is a way to secure these computer-based voting systems. And I don't know whether or not that is entirely a sincere representation of their position. Perhaps they're calculating sort of an interim step to ultimately doing away with the computers altogether. But do you think President Trump understands the acute vulnerabilities of these computer-based voting systems? And is it their plan to try to do something, as you said, to patch that system? Or is the ultimate goal and objective to do away with the computer-based voting system entirely?
Well, I've often said you can't sweep a dirt floor. I wanted to get, when I ran for Secretary of State, I wanted to do away with the registration database that ERIC, Electronic Registration Information Center, David Becker, who is a commentator on CNN, who was actually Obama. A lot of this stuff happened during the Obama era.
True.
And who was very evil, actually knows how to, manipulate the voter registration database. As clerk, we were not able to get in once the election started till after the election started because they're in there monkeying with it. So anything electronic needs to be done away with. You cannot, I got this one hair right here. Let me get it out of there. There's one thing that people need to understand. Any computer can be hacked. And so you've got to come back to and people may think, well, this is primitive. No, it's not. It's accurate, it's transparent, and it's a way that people can actually see for their own 2 eyes that their vote counted. You need to have paper poll books. So when you go into the precinct to vote, they have a list, a computer list or whatever, or not, a printout. I wouldn't say computer list. They have a list of people's names, and they go through and they check it off. They check off your name and you show your ID and you sign it. Very simple. This is not complicated rocket science. If what I'm proposing, and people will see in the plan, it was called the 100-day plan. It's now more like the 97-day plan. So that's why we have to get on this. When I say we, I mean the American people. I
Yeah.
don't necessarily mean the administration, because they're already familiar with it, but the American people need to be on this, calling Howard Lutnick, calling the White House, asking President Trump to do these things. But if we use the machines, let's just say, because states have their own rights on how they run elections. The federal government can call the shots when it comes to federal races. So that's where our play is right now. Our play is for any federal races, this needs to be done. If they're going to put them through the machines, then that's fine, except for the election cannot be certified until every ballot is hand counted. Every voter verified paper ballots, because we know that when the ballots go in the machines, I mean, if you just read Mesa County Reports 1, 2, and 3 on my website, what sent me to prison, literally, if you'll just, and why, that information is still it's evergreen. It's still what caused all hell to break loose, and literally hell to break loose, in attacks against me and others, and to try to keep that information quiet. So that's the goal, Chris. And
so you're saying that if they want to use the computers, well, okay, use the computers, but you're talking about the ballot that is readable by the voter, the paper ballot that actually reflects the choice that the voter made and that are kept in the drop box after they're scanned or whatever. You're saying that no election should be certified if you use the computers until every one of those human readable paper ballots is counted.
That's right. That's right. And our elections have gone from election day to election month, literally.
And it shouldn't take that long, should it?
No. So they have no excuse that it's going to make the election longer, because what they're doing is when they're trying to add days on the back end, they're trying to get ballots in there to justify their totals. So we say you count them now. You count them on election day, and you start counting them. You don't let any more ballots that were postmarked after election 7 p.m. or whatever on election night. There's ways to do this that is going to bring more trust back to the system, where the people can actually see that their vote was counted.
Yeah, and Tina, I think that this position makes, or this plan makes the position of secretaries of state pretty untenable with the people. How do you look people in the face and say, well, we're going to do this other arcade game over here, but you get to have paper ballots for anybody you vote for at the federal level?
Right. And so that's another thing too, is that then they won't, I mean, it's going to look very different if people are voting in the federal races in a like manner that is traditionally, let's just say, in Colorado, in Arapahoe County, we had somehow Republicans voted for a property tax increase.
Right.
Well, I would like to take a poll of how many Republicans really voted
for that. Right.
Property tax increase. It doesn't happen, and we have through Ed Solomon, who has examined all of this. We have proof that didn't happen, that it was an algorithm.
What do you think of Ed's idea that we shouldn't even have a voter registry? We should just have people show up the day of with their identifying information, like you would if you were basically going to get a passport.
I like that. I just spent time with Ed, by the way. I just spent almost a week with him and Andrew Appel, and some really great people, Mark Cook and different people. But I agree with him. I think that the idea of having a for people to come in and register to vote every 2 years, at least every 2 years. Do 1 year, but like you do with your car registration. I mean, we do that with our car registrations at the clerk's office, but we have to wait 8 years in Colorado to get anybody off the voter rolls, which is ludicrous. Two presidential election cycles. So I agree. I think that, but we can't even get the SAVE Act passed.
Right.
What's up with that? What is it? 80% of the Americans, or 60, 70, 80% of the Americans, both Democrat, Republican, want people to be able to show a voter ID. Why aren't these representatives passing that? And I would say to every state where their representative is voting no, they need to blast them. They need to call. They need to continue calling. They need to flood their line because it doesn't line up with anything other than corruption on that person's. And I'll just say it right out.
Absolutely unbelievable.
Yes, you need to start looking into their background and see who they're beholden to, because they're obviously not beholden to the people that they're supposed to represent.
Exactly.
And I'm really hard line on this.
Yeah.
When you have 80%, as you said, of the American people who support the SAVE Act very strongly, and we have a Republican-controlled Congress, and we can't get it passed, and all you get from John Thune is, well, sorry, we don't have the votes. Well, Senator
find
Thune,
him,
that's
buddy.
just not
Find
good
him.
enough.
Right.
It's just not good enough, So I want to ask you a little bit about your looking back on your experience and everything that you went through, all the persecution. Danielle and I have talked about this at length, and it looks like just a grotesque miscarriage of justice that was perpetrated against you. Total weaponization of the criminal justice system in the state of Colorado, with probably collusion by the federal government, even though they weren't formally involved in it. Most people in your position, Tina, would have real animosity, real animus and anger toward her persecutors, and for good reason. But I guess apart from that, is there any degree of personal accountability that you're looking for here? Any sort of justice in the face of everything that you've been through? And if so, who?
Well, in Colorado, we have the Secretary of State, who's the one that actually cheated when I won the primary, because we saw the votes flipping primary night, and that stole that race, and then I raised $250,000 to do a recount, which she did illegally. She did it against what the law says the way to do it, using the voter verified paper ballots instead of the machines again. And all the other things that she's done, the Mesa County reports show that there were 29,000 election records that were overwritten or deleted, and 36 wireless devices in a system that her office had told me were air gapped. There were all kinds of software in those machines. Her people came in under her direction to do these things in accordance with Dominion voting system. She's been sued for HAVA violations. She has been, the passwords she says that I put out, which were not, they were redacted, one password redacted. She put out passwords publicly on the website for anyone to see in 63 counties, which are multiple felonies. But she just so happens to be running for the highest attorney position in Colorado right now. And she just won the primary. Well, I say she won the primary, allegedly won the primary. Then you have the district attorney who came after me hard, not district attorney, the attorney general of Colorado. They came after me very hard, sent his two best attorneys from his office to Colorado to actually conduct the trial against me. And he's running for governor, and allegedly won his primary election.
Hmm.
You know, I don't concern myself with retaliation against people, because, you know, the Bible says, justice is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. These people have done enough against the American people that at a certain point, God's going to say no more.
Yeah.
And there's enough information, just like with Fauci, just like, you know, with Jack Smith and all these others, that God's going to allow it all to come forth. And so I don't focus so much on going after them. I focus on what needs to be done. You know, where my lane is, what God is, like I let my attorneys take care of my appeal. I'm not done yet. I mean, this is supposed to go back for resentencing to that judge. So right now, my case is in the Colorado Supreme Court. They have yet to hear it. If they pass on it, which I wouldn't think would be a smart thing for them to do, only because they got trounced in the Anderson versus Trump case. This is a really strong case for violations, many constitutional violations, not just the violation of free speech. So it would behoove them to kind of correct the ship a little bit in the Colorado Supreme Court, unless they're totally taken over. And you know, so but that's between them and God. I mean, they have to do. They're gonna reap what they sow. All of these people are gonna reap what they sow.
Yeah.
But you're trying to get it back, but you're hoping and trying to get it back in front of the trial court and be resentenced.
Well, I don't want to be resentenced by that judge.
Or even have the case go away entirely. Exactly. Yeah.
I want the Colorado Supreme Court to overturn my case. There was
entirely
too many violations for due process. There were too many violations in that case to allow it to stand. And if it doesn't, then we go to the U.S. Supreme Court. And the supremacy clause is something that the U.S. the Supreme Court needs to hear. And I believe that it's coming up in a lot of cases besides just mine, of the supreme right of the federal government. So I was protecting federal election records.
Yeah.
But I was never allowed to present that to the jury. When you're performing
because of the way that they crafted, so the way that they so strategically crafted the charges against you, right?
They could have been brought out because it showed why I did what I did. So and I'd rather John Case and Peter Tickton address the legal part of my case instead of me. But yes, we're looking to overturn that verdict. I think every American knows that there was something wrong there, and the Colorado Supreme Court could do the right thing. If it doesn't, then it's time. Then God's allowing that to go forward for the U.S. Supreme Court to actually bring out on the forefront the supremacy clause, and that's going to be a decision that needs to be heard and needs to be strengthened and decided on. So that's what goes on from there. But I want to show everybody, before we get off, I want to show them my website, and I'll tell them a little bit about, what they can do, because, I can talk about my experiences and all that, and encourage people to seek God and to go forward find out first what it is that he wants you to do. Make sure you're not making an apple pie for God, and he really likes cherry, But but yeah, there are some action items I would like to get. And also I would love for you to have on your show a young woman that I was on a show with Trinus Evans yesterday,
Okay.
who is 30 days away from going to federal prison for stepping in to make sure that her child was not surgically transitioned.
Wow.
And now they're sending her to prison. So,
Yeah,
and I'll share.
we'd love to have her on. We have had Trinus on to talk about your case, and maybe he was speaking about hers as well. Is she the California mom?
I just met her for the first time yesterday, and just wanted to encourage her that she is going to be a voice for people that have walked through what she's going through. But she's afraid. She's got small children
Yeah.
still at home, and
Why would
it's
somebody have to go to prison for that, Tina?
well, and that's the question. And so we're hoping that this is a federal case. So I think she has a lot of hope there that I didn't have in mind, being a state case. But her story needs to be heard and needs to encourage other people. So I'll share that with you off air.
Okay.
Yeah. Her
Beautiful.
name is,
What's her name?
it's Serena.
Okay.
So I'll share that.
Okay.
Danielle, you got to ask her. You got to ask Tina about the midterms too, right?
I will. And I do want you to know, Tina, we do have your website. I don't know if you can see it on your side, but we've had your website here listed on the screen the whole time, tinapeters.us, and we can pull it up. If you want me to just show people what it looks like, I can pull it
Sure.
up.
Right.
Let's see. Try and hide some stuff people don't need to see about my screen. See
How many tabs you have open?
Exactly, my
You gotta
900
screen that
tabs.
screen, Danielle. You got to screen that screen.
Here we go. There we go.
Okay. So in that is the plan, the 100 days to secure the 2026 election, paper ballots, full hand counts, real accountability. So if people will read that letter, that's the letter that that we sent to after meeting with CISA, with the actual deputy, second in command of CISA, and Nick Anderson, the letter that we sent to him, and then the plan. And then the plan should have the phone numbers. If it doesn't, let me look. If it doesn't, we will put it up there, check back. I would encourage everyone to keep checking back on tinapeters.us. You can sign up there if you want. We won't spam you with a bunch of stuff. As a matter of fact, my team, I have a small team, and they, they're very, very hardworking, but we will get more information out. But it tells you the 6 immediate controls. And we want to transition people away from the BMDs, the ballot marking devices, toward hand-marked paper ballots, while preserving, really you only need one ballot marking device to fulfill HAVA, which the Help America Vote Act for people that have disabilities. They
Right.
took that and they multiplied these ballot marking devices, making it impossible for people to know if the machine was actually correctly and accurately doing their vote properly. And what I said was using existing tabulators in the initial unofficial election night count after the polls close. And then, of course, the chain of custody, and then the bank teller method. Hand count every ballot for federal contests before certification and reconcile that count with the tabulated result. And then you'll see down there, it talks about the bank teller method, what that is. And then maintain, we talked about this, paper poll books or parallel paper participation records, so electronic failures cannot stop voting or eliminate the voter to ballot reconciliation trail. And then recruit and train count only election workers. So a lot of the election workers have to be registered to vote. You can have teenagers in there. You can have, it shouldn't just to count There, that's what we need. Who report when counting begins with, and then it tells you days 1 to 7, then 8 to 30, what needs to happen, 31 to 60, 61 to 85, and 86 to 100. So this is what you can read the complete plan. It's a 14-page mitigation election plan. And you can really read the letter to CISA that we sent. And then we had 3 experts. There's plenty more experts. There's like you mentioned, David Clements, and there's many experts on elections. But we felt because these PhD Dr. Andrew Appel, Dr. Philip Stark, and Dr. J. Alex Halderman all dealt with different areas of the election process, that it was important to include their letters and their concerns and warnings to CISA. We want people to call the White House and ask them, we want them to specifically, Howard Lutnick is under DHS Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen. So we want people to contact him and start implementing this. This is something that we can do. We don't have to wait to fix things until after. I say fix the fix. We don't have to wait until after the midterms.
Sure.
People always want to give you an excuse. Well, it's too soon. It's too soon. And it's not too soon. Everybody can do something. They can't get us all, is what I always like to say.
You're so right. And for many people who have been fighting for so long to have paper ballots, hand-marked, hand-counted paper ballots, the resistance has been tremendous, absolutely tremendous. And anyway, Chris may be getting into that here in a minute with respect to Louisiana, but I did want to ask you, this is a 100-day plan. You said maybe 97 days now. Do we get there? Do we get to the regularly scheduled midterms, or do you think, either based on intel or just a feeling, that the midterms are somehow not going to go according to plan?
Well, there's things I don't know. There's things I can't talk about. And then, of course, above all that is God. So, I think that, I always go toward to meet the deadline. So do everything you can. And just in case there's not something else coming, right? To rescue or to, so I would say everyone needs to do their part to contact the White House, contact the Mark Wayne Mullen and DHS. They came out, not a lot of people know, they came out on, I believe it was July 10th with a grant, $1 billion to the states that comply with certain things like paper ballots and so on and so forth. So that might be a good thing to bring up, and if not on this show, maybe attach it to your site about that, because that's a very good incentive.
We know our public officials here are incentivized by cash.
Yes, they
good.
are.
Well,
indeed, they are. It's about all they're incentivized by, unfortunately. But Tina, he also said not only is there that positive carrot there, but there's also the stick, because he was also very, very clear that if you don't work with us and you don't comply with us, well, you can say goodbye to your federal grants, which I thought was also very important.
There you go. And
Tina,
that's a lot of what went on to pressure my release too, is,
True.
Yeah. Money talks. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It does talk. I wanted to mention this one comment in the chat, Tina. It's from our friend Bert Colley. You may know his name from Colley versus Louisiana, the big Supreme Court case a couple couple months back about redistricting and racial gerrymandering. He chatted in and he said, "I've followed Tina Peters from the beginning and I've followed all through the trial. This is a great day to see her out well and talking with my friends. She says the same thing I do. Our election should not be certified until all the paper ballots are physically counted."
Good, good. Well, then he needs to call and call Washington, and they will answer. And if the lines are busy or not working, it's just because so many people are calling. So, set your Siri, your alarm on your phone, call the White House and do that. I would do that
Yeah.
I would just set an alarm on your phone to call the White House and the number, and call Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen with DHS, Howard Lutnick, who's under him, and we'll get their attention. We'll get it done, and they're doing what they're truly doing what they can. It's a massive undertaking, but we can do it.
Yeah.
My best friend Marcy says, she has it on her wall above her bed too. But God, ...
But
So,
God. But God.
Amen.
and don't just pray. I just tell people, I love prayers and I love people praying and I appreciate it so much, so much. You just have no idea. But when you pray, move your feet. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like, don't just pray, actually do something. So this is something
Absolutely.
everybody
That's
can do.
so true. So true. We've got to, there was a great Jesuit who said many years ago, you have to pray like everything is up to God, but you've got to move like it's all up to you.
That's
And
good.
there's something to be said for that. Tina, this report, okay, there's a report that Mullen mentioned in his presentation, in his speech. He said, he gave the speech a couple of weeks ago or whatever. So in about 2.5 weeks, there will be a formal report that is released by by DHS that contains directives to the states regarding how to secure the systems, and they expect the states to cooperate. So one of the things we're hoping for here is that among those directives is a directive requiring what you just said, right? That there can be no certification of certainly any federal election until every single piece of paper is hand counted, right?
Right.
That's one of the things we're looking for in this report, hopefully.
Yes.
Okay.
And so please, like I said, people have no idea how powerful it is when they call the White House. All those calls are logged, and what they're asked. And please don't waste time going into long stories and all that. Just say it and thank
Exactly.
you and hang
Yeah.
up. Don't
Everybody's
take up
busy. Yeah.
don't take up their time with long diatribes about what you would do and whatever. Just say it. Just write it down or put it on your phone for when you call. A short little thing, please do this, or please do the plan on tinapeters.us, or describe the plan briefly. But please don't give them a long story about all your experience and your feelings about this and that and the other. They're very, very busy. And so please be respectful of their time, and for other people trying to call in as well, that will get a busy signal if you're on the phone. Okay.
Yeah. So you want to say people could just say, if this is all the time they had, they could just say, "We support Tina Peters' plan. Please implement Tina Peters' plan."
Yeah.
And that could
At
be their way.
tinapeters.us.
At
Yeah, it's the
tinapeters.us.
election mitigation plan on Tina Peters' website. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I'm.
tinapeters.us.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
So
risk mitigation.
I have one final question here for you, Tina, and this is something that I can't wait to get your response to here. Our Secretary of State here in Louisiana, as recently as yesterday, I think it's interesting that you're coming on today, because yesterday our Secretary of State entertained a public voting system demonstration from a company with which I know you're familiar called Smartmatic. And despite their current criminal troubles, despite their horrible reputation, despite the fact that they are just absolutely the last people on earth you would want to be dancing with or dealing with a $100 million contract for voting systems. She's entertaining them. Now, that doesn't mean that she's going to grant them the contract. She's also entertaining, in fairness, other voting system companies. But I just want to get your reaction and your thoughts on that, maybe on Smartmatic, and what do you think is maybe going down here, and the timing of this, that Danielle has said, look, she's doing this a week after we get this staunch warning from both DHS and the president of how vulnerable these systems are. I mean, what's your gut response to this?
Well, I would have your listeners call her office as well.
Yeah, right. And tell her to do your plan.
And tell her that that you don't. If she signs this, $100 million plan or contract, that you do not trust her. That you'll be looking into her background to see why she would do such a foolish and reckless thing when Smartmatic we've already proven that they were involved in Venezuela to cheat the elections in favor of Hugo Chavez and Maduro, and there are whistleblowers that have come out and there are reports that have come out. Why would you use the same company that has been used to cheat elections around the world? I would call her on the carpet for that. Why? And plus, here's another thing. Think about what $100 million could do if it was given to people that are counting ballots.
Amen.
And people that are,
yay,
okay, to the economy and uplifting the citizens of your state, and putting the money to the state and not a single vendor.
That's exactly, Danielle can tell you and others can tell you, that is exactly what my position is on this. That if we have to pay honest citizens to do this and to help administer a secure system, then by gosh, we can do it. God knows we
and for a lot less than $100 million.
That's right.
A lot less for $100 million. And by the way, Tina, the $100 million is just the initial outlay. That doesn't even include the annual maintenance costs.
Oh, the annual maintenance. The annual maintenance will be just like the trusted build in Colorado, I'm sure. It'll be to wipe out any of the evidence of how they arrived at the election, the access logs, audit logs, the adjudication logs, the proof of, how did you actually reach the decision or the results.
Right.
Yeah. And you pay them to do that.
Yeah.
We paid them. We paid $100,000 a year for them to come in and do what they did that we found out in April in 2021. So
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, Tina,
I would definitely have your people call her office and say absolutely not. And if you do, give the money to the people to count the ballots. Here's the plan. And if you do this, we are going to look into your background, because there is an incentive for you to cost the taxpayers $100 million of money that they don't want you to do. And we need to be more firm with our people and say, we are going to look into your background, offshore accounts, whatever you've got going, girl, we are going to find it, because nobody in their right mind should be considering a contract with a company like that.
I couldn't agree with you more, and we could not let you go before giving you a chance to weigh in on it. So, Tina, God bless you. Thank you for being such a great patriot, and really for the example that you've set for so many Americans with regard to courage, redemption, and ultimate vindication. And I believe that your vindication is only just begun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
God bless you.
God bless you.
We hope to have you back soon, Tina.
All right, Danielle and Chris, thank you to all those people out there that are listening to your broadcast. Please set your phone, set your alarm on your phone to call every day, several times a day, your representatives and the people that we've mentioned on this show. Thank you.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. All right.
God
God bless
bless.
you, Tina.
Thank you.
Chris, what a privilege. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just so good to see her doing so well. You know, we, along with many, many, many others I know, were praying for her. We're just couldn't believe the outcome of her case. I think, you know, when she was talking about the story of when she was in California 5 days before her case was supposed to
Go to trial.
go to trial, I think she came on and was with us because I remember her telling us that story the first time, and so
Yep.
I
I
do, I
remember
do,
I remember it vividly. She was on the show very shortly before all that went down because I
yeah,
remember reading about it in the paper.
exactly. And I just want to, if anyone doesn't know Tina's story, if they're not familiar with her story, I think you got a little insight today. But she had joined us a number of times before she was sentenced. And I'll give the numbers of episodes, but we'll put the links to them in the show notes in case y'all want to go back and watch. They were episodes 118, 119, 128, 141, and 142. And look, one thing you have to say about her, Chris, she hasn't changed a drop. You know, in terms of her character, I'm sure it's only deepened. In terms of her sweet spirit, you know, it's a lot of the people we bring on this show, but I will say, you know, it's very striking with Professor Clements and with Tina, just the sweet spirit that they carry of the Holy Spirit. You know, you can just tell that they've been with God. What a high point of praise and something that people notice about you is that you are someone who's been with God. You can sense the peace that she carries. She's not stressed out about, you know, where things go from here in terms of her vindication, in terms of getting even with those people who have done her so wrong, who raked her over the coals. And I know she only scratched the surface today of talking about what all she's been through and the evils that they've done to her. So, what a blessing and an honor to be able to spend some time with her today. And I don't know what else to say about it except I'm just so grateful. And I think we should all take heed to her encouragement to pray for President Trump, to call the White House, to call our representatives, and to call Nancy Landry's office. And we can make sure that people have at least the Secretary of State and the White House phone number in the show notes to this as well. But that's all easy to look up, folks. Y'all don't have to rely on us for that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, y'all can do that. And so you're so right, Danielle. There's no question that she carries, I think, the Holy Spirit in her,
Yeah.
and because that is the only way that she would not be, uh, you know, absolutely, you know, inflamed with anger and rage over what occurred to her. I just think that she has reached a place of peace and has will be the instrument that God really desires her to be. The ultimate, to me, the ultimate tribute and the ultimate, I think, legacy of Tina Peters when all of this is said and done, and we look back on her in history, I truly believe that she's just a stellar example of precisely the sort of perseverance and courage that is required if you call yourself a follower of Christ. And I think that all of us need to look deep within ourselves, all of us, and ask ourselves the question, to what extent am I truly, truly sold out and committed to the heart of Christ with everything that that entails? You know, we always have to be checking ourselves whether or not our Christian actions are consistent with our Christian words, and whether or not we're simply camouflaging, you know, our faith, or we're pretending to be something that perhaps we're not when you really get down to what it means to be a follower of Christ. And that does entail affliction, that does entail suffering, and that does entail adversity, or else we can't call ourselves followers of Christ. And Tina Peters is a perfect example of that. And ultimately, she's a great example of what it means to be vindicated because she kept her faith. And that's why I think she's such a powerful American story. And I don't even think, Danielle, that she has begun to make the ultimate contribution to our country and to liberty that she will.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. And one of the things that really is just stirring in me is that she's doing the great commandments, right? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. There's no greater love than this, to lay your life down for your friend, right? She she's loving her neighbor as the voters, the citizens, right? She did that in service to them as the clerk and recorder. She did that in standing up for their right to have their voices heard and speaking the truth. And then she did it again in prison, and will continue to do that with her prison reform efforts. And I think that's something that we could just spend a lot of time with her on, because it's something you and I are both very passionate about as well: criminal justice reform and prison reform. Because if we're all created in the image of Christ, every single life needs to be treated with dignity. And
Absolutely.
I really appreciated what she said so much about your sentence is the punishment. You don't just they're not supposed to just continue heaping more and more degrading punishment on top of the sentence. The sentence is the sentence. So the rest of it needs to be dignified, and people can work through whatever got them there. But it's completely unacceptable the way that our criminal justice system feels that they're able to treat people. And you and I have talked a lot offline about the evils of the private prison system in the state of Louisiana, and I would love to compare notes with her on that at some point.
Absolutely. That would be a great conversation, because you're so right. That's an issue that has to be delved into. And the extent to which so many different people, politicians, and everybody else are benefiting from that system. And the ultimate casualty of that system are the very people who are supposed to be serving their time in a just way, and also being rehabilitated, because I still believe in genuine rehabilitation, and I know that it happens every day. But when you have a for-profit prison system where people are making millions and millions of dollars in order to keep people incarcerated for as long as they can, the longer these people are jailed, the more money they make. That is just an intractable conflict of interest that goes against the very function and purpose of the criminal justice system, and certainly the penal system. So that's something we have to talk about at some length. But last point I want to make on this, Danielle, is that you mentioned that Tina Peters is doing her duty. She's standing for the American citizens, loving her neighbor. You know what else she's doing? She's also praying for and loving for her enemies.
Yeah.
And that, according to the words of Jesus himself, is the ultimate tribute to God. And her attitude toward her persecutors, and her lack of anger, and really an attitude of genuine love, I think, really reflects the heart of Christ in a very supreme way, with that ultimate commandment, which is to love and pray for your enemies. And I can't think of anything that is any harder to do, at least for me, on a personal level. It's very, very, very difficult to do.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think Jesus was very clear that it was not going to be an easy thing to do. So
right,
you got
exactly. Right. And that we wouldn't be perfect at it.
Yeah, we might not be perfect at it, but it is something we got to work at, and you're absolutely right. A couple things before we go, Chris. For folks who haven't watched it, Tina was part of a fantastic film a couple years ago called The Selection Code. Laura Logan was in there as well. I think Laura may have been doing the interviewing. I can't exactly remember how it went, but it is a fantastic film, and it's a great encapsulation of what happens behind the scenes in our election system. And I think it was specific to Colorado, if memory serves, but you will want to check that out. I believe there are links to it on her website. Again, tinapeters.us. And of course, if you want to support Tina, she didn't say this, but she, I'm sure she still has a ton of legal fees. I know they raked her over the coals and beyond that financially. So if you want to support Tina directly, I believe you can also do that at tinapeters.us. And I would encourage anyone who feels pulled in that direction to please do that, because she has stood up for us when very, very few other people have. So I would encourage that. And then lastly, I spoke to a friend today who encouraged us to mention about the upcoming congressional races here that will be happening at the midterms. And so just want to remind people, and I think we've mentioned it here before, Chris, but maybe we weren't very clear about it, that the Paul Hurd and his team have challenged the last congressional map, the one that came out during the regular session, the one by Jay Morris. Of course, you remember the number of it. I don't. You remember it?
121.
Yeah, exactly. See how he does that, folks? So helpful. Anyway, that map has been challenged, but I believe the Supreme Court has frozen any ability to further change maps before the midterms. So the challenge will continue, but not until after the midterms. So all that to say, the map stands. If you are not aware that you do have a congressional district that is set in temporary stone until
For at
it's
least one
able
election cycle.
for one election cycle. This is the map, and you can find it. I will drop it in the chat. I had pulled it up so that I would be able to drop it in the chat for folks who are looking to find it, because that's an important thing for everybody to know about. Sorry, it's just going to take me a second to find it in all of my tabs over here. Oh, goodness. And then, yeah, here we go. All right, so I'll drop this in. Let's see if I can find, all right, the chat. This is where you can find both your parish level map, I think, or your district level map and the full state map. And I'll try and drop it in Rumble as well, if I can find my Rumble. Hold on, folks, sorry. It takes a village. All right, here we go. Let's see. And then the other thing I want to mention is something that I have been mentioning every show, but would still encourage, which is that if you are interested in this issue of elections and accountability, we will be attending the Unauthorized Summit. It's called the Storm Summit. Tina will be there. She's a confirmed speaker, and so we would love to see you there if you can swing it. It's going to be September 10th through the 13th. And what a great lineup. A lot of the names we've talked about here, but I know specifically Tina mentioned Mark Cook. He will be there. Joe Hoft, who's a great friend of the show, will be there. And Trennis Evans, who Tina also mentioned, as well as her attorney, Peter Tickton, will be there. So we would welcome y'all to attend that. It should be a very, very good time. I think there we go. I think the Fraud Fighter Summit was excellent, and so people would really enjoy it. And I think
It's going to be great, and we're going to have so much fun. Before we go, Danielle, I just want to encourage people to continue following, subscribing, and supporting the State of Freedom, and also LeCag. We are absolutely, absolutely continuing to push this envelope, continuing to speak the truth to whoever is willing to listen to us speak the truth, because ultimately the truth will prevail, and we're not going to do anything else. And you can trust that when you come here and listen to us, you will get the truth in a way that you can understand, and in a way that will embolden you to take the action that needs to be taken to truly reform our government here in Louisiana, and really give liberty, true liberty, a foothold once again here in Louisiana. And that's what we are all about. So support the State of Freedom and support LeCag, and we will continue to fight for you to victory. Because Danielle, I do believe that we will achieve victory if we continue forward. And I think that there are signs of it everywhere.
I think there are too, Chris. And just a little bit more on the State of Freedom and LeCag, maybe worth mentioning that these are two separate organizations that have two separate funding structures because there's a lot of different efforts and a lot of different software and a lot of different work that goes into those two separately. So it's important that if you support one, please, if you can, support the other one as
Yes.
well. That's
Yes.
incredibly important for us to be able to keep this work going. And also want to just mention the Warrior Circle gives you some exclusive perks, and some of those include being able to dial or text into the Freedom Phone, especially on Warrior Wednesdays, but you can also text us questions. So if you have any questions that you would like for us to consider to bring up, you can do that, whether it's about Louisiana or whether it's specific to a particular guest are coming on. And you will always know first who the guests are for the week ahead, what topics we're talking about for the week ahead if you are in the Warrior Circle. And you can join that. You can join us at the Warrior Circle for $10 a month at join.freedomstate.us. So I hope that you will do that. We appreciate it so much. It's exclusive perks, but it also supports the show and keeps us going. So we really appreciate you guys. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Danielle, God bless you until we reconvene. An hour and 50 minutes. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
We really are going the full mile this week.
We really are. We've had a couple of long ones lately, but
Yeah.
It's always enjoyable, and we'll reconvene soon.
Yep. We'll see you here on Tuesday, 10 a.m. Central. Love you, everybody.
Thank you. Red Zeppelin is the best kept secret, but because of us, it's really not a secret anymore. Anybody who has not been to Red Zeppelin on Perkins Road in Baton Rouge, you're truly missing out. The best environment, the best service, and the best pizza in the state of Louisiana. Go to Red Zeppelin today. Tell them the State of Freedom sent you. Red Zeppelin, Tigerland Properties. These are licensed professional realtors in Louisiana, commercial, residential, investments, whatever you choose to do. These people, whether you're buying, whether you're selling, whether you want to invest, these people are the best in the business. They really are. Tigerland Properties, mainly they work in the Boot area of Louisiana, down in South Louisiana, but truly you could not be in better hands if you're buying or selling commercial, residential, or investing than Tigerland Properties. I encourage you to call them 225-320-3004. You'll want to make sure you're in good hands with commercial, residential, real estate, or investment. And they are the best. Tigerland.
Thanks for joining us today on the State of Freedom. Any follow-up actions, resources, and links to our sponsors will be in the show notes. All calls to action can be taken at lacag.org. That's LACAG.org.
To learn more about our work, become a monthly subscriber, supporter, or advertiser at freedomstate.us. The State of Freedom, the #1 conservative podcast in Louisiana.